Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another night of What the Church Could Be. Pastor Wes here to bring you another life-changing word is what I pray for you. Welcome to our church. Tonight we go about 30 minutes is what we do. Sometimes a little over like last week we did, but we keep it straight to the point is what we do. What the church could be, the name says it all. We are shedding off old ideas about tradition, about human frailty, about our ideas about God, and pushing for a bigger God that loves more than we think is what it really ultimately is. The whole focus of tonight, how can I love better? How can I see people suffering? How can I care about that? How can I want to do something different about that is what I want to do, and be the salt of the earth. To be an active agent for change is what we also want to do. So welcome to church tonight. If it's your first time visiting, first time checking us out, just to let you know we got virtual service every Thursday at 7 p.m., every Saturday at 6 p.m., every Sunday 10:30 a.m. we have our in-person service. Doors open at 10:30 a.m. by the way. It's at the Alhambra Ballroom. I'd love to see you there in person. To our beloved New York family and those who tune in around the world, thanks for stopping by. As always, thanks for connecting. I hope you've been engaging in this new series we started, because I know it is really probably challenging. It's life-changing. It's challenging for me. It's new and fresh for me to teach. Also at the same time, I may not be new to the idea of it or living it in my life, but I am new to teaching it, to be honest. And I love being able to come to you guys on Thursday. You trust me enough to really be able to present new ideas, work on them, get better at teaching them. Let's be saying that, and then bring them in on Saturday and Sunday and really teach them really well. And that's because of you. This crowd right here is what it is. So I'm so grateful to be able to do this, connect with you wherever you may be, whenever you may be watching this. So let's pray and we'll get started. Heavenly Father, we come before you tonight once again just to acknowledge your grace and your goodness that your Spirit is putting in our heart. May this love that you have for all humanity just explode on the inside of us and become so great. We open ourselves to it. Father, I need you to order my steps, articulate my words. May it be a revelation that points people back to you ultimately is what it is. And may it be an on-time word that blesses your people. In Jesus' name, amen. Getting into this, a nonviolent God. I think for me, what it is I hope you really take away from this entire thing that's turning into a mini-series is, because we're already on week 3 of this, I hope that you will be able to recognize when people are suffering and people are being oppressed and people are being hurt in the various ways it takes place through violence, and that you care. I'm not saying you don't care about things and don't care. You're able to recognize that, though, and you push for a world that is free of that, free of the isms, free of the violence we started to cover. The 6 types of violence we're going to cover, we started halfway through it. I'm going to touch on the ones we already did cover, and then I'm going to get into the other ones. But I hope you can see the various ways that violence comes out to hurt people, to injure people, and that we don't stay passive about it, that we don't stay quiet about it, that we search for a way by the Spirit of God to not contribute to the violence ourselves and not to pick up the sword of violence ourselves to retaliate, but yet find a way to create a safer world and stand up and defend against hate is what I hopefully pray. I think that's what I've been trying to get to and get out of me. That's why I keep preaching it each week and coming back to it, because it gets clearer each time. The types of violence, though, that we're going to cover, I want you to write these down, hopefully, or put them up in the chat. We cover physical violence. That's number 1. Physical violence. Number 2, financial and economic violence. Financial and economic violence. Number 3, psychological or emotional violence. Psychological is primarily the one to focus on, but it can lead to emotional violence. Psychological violence. Number 4, social violence. And I'll explain what each one is. Number 4 is social violence. Number 5 is political violence. Thanks for throwing these up in the chat, by the way. Number 5 is political violence. Political violence. And number 6 is religious violence. Religious violence, which is definitely one we're going to get into, and it's going to probably carry us into another 2 weeks. I thought we were going to be 3 and done. This thing is already turning into 5 weeks, I'm already saying here. It's great. Let me insert our 2 foundation scriptures, and then let's start going through these 6 areas of violence, and it'll probably carry us through the rest of the night here before I insert new thoughts. We may shorten it to about 25 minutes tonight because I don't want to get too much inserted where now it starts kind of confusing and jumbling all together. Isaiah 55, verse 8 through 9. Isaiah 55, verse 8 through 9 says, from the NLT, says, my thoughts are nothing like your thoughts, says the Lord, and my ways are far beyond anything you could imagine. For just as the heavens are higher than the earth, so my ways are higher than your ways, and my thoughts are higher than your thoughts. I keep presenting this because our goal is to strive for a higher way of thinking. I don't want us clinging to the old ideas that religion has poured into us, that life has poured into us, that make us very complacent towards violence, or that deem God is somehow a user of violence also. I don't subscribe to those ideas like I used to, because you go back to Old Testament God and you start looking at, well, he's a baby killer. He's burning up the gays. He's killing anybody that ain't for him and that's against him. He's killing up every other religion and nation and genocide and everything else. I don't think that was God. I think that was humans' flawed ideas about God, trying to pursue God, trying to feel after God. I'm not denying that the accounts that they said happened, not denying that the war effects physically happened. I'm denying the fact that God was the author behind it as much as they think. And they were trying to deal with their own chaotic times in our own broken world that was walking in limited light. We have a lot more light today than they did. So we shouldn't be living in an outdated version of God. We should be living, when we look at the person of Christ, when we look at Jesus, and I can take you through, and I will take you through, probably starting next week, scriptures and passages where Jesus was not pro-violence, but he also at the same time stood up for those who were about to become victims or were victims of the violence, showing an anti-violence stance. Isaiah 11, verse 1 through 9, it says, out of the stump of David's family will grow a shoot, just as a new branch bearing fruit from the old root. And the Spirit of the Lord will rest on him, and the Spirit of wisdom and understanding, the Spirit of counsel and might, the Spirit of knowledge and honor of the Lord. He will delight in obeying the Lord. He will not judge by appearance, nor make decisions based on hearsay. He will give justice to the poor and make fair decisions for the exploited. That's important. That's what I'm talking about tonight. We learn these from Jesus. We don't make judgments based on appearance or hearsay. We give justice to the poor. That's not just only talking about financial poor. That's poor in any capacity. And make fair decisions for the exploited. Fairness for the exploited, the taken advantage of, those who aren't able to even stand up for themselves maybe. Those who don't have a voice that should have a voice. We make room for that. In that day, with this idea, when this idea is carried out, when this idea is done, when this idea fills the earth is what it is, what we're talking about. In that day, the wolf and the lamb will live together. Someone who normally, the lamb is lamb chops for the wolf, but there's peace there. The leopard will lie down with the baby goat. The calf and the yearling will be safe with the lion, and the little child will lead them all. The cow will graze near the bear. The cub and the calf will lie down together. The lion will eat hay like a cow. The sworn enemies will be at peace with each other, in harmony with each other. The baby will play safely near the hole of the cobra. Yes, a little child will put its hand in a nest of deadly snakes without harm. Nothing will hurt or destroy in all my holy mountain. For as the water fills the sea, so the earth will be filled with people who know the Lord, or know this idea about God, know this extreme love is what it is. And that's what we're after. We're after that extreme love. Now, the type of violence that can be implemented towards people, we started getting into this, that we need to be more aware of. We need to sometimes be more anti towards, and everybody's going to have to examine your own heart. Where do you stand with this? Where am I doing my part in my place to make sure I am not a victim of it? Yes, we don't want that. To make sure I'm also not a contributor to it, but also to make sure I'm not passively standing on the sidelines for it either. The church, when it comes to some of these areas of violence, is either the biggest contributor are the most quiet about it. And we wonder why people don't want anything to do with us. Because we're saying we're the moral status, we're the moral authority, yet we are failing morally, is what we're doing. Because we can't see violence, and we are also instruments of the violence at the same time. And it's our ideas. So we're trying to change that. But this starts with recognizing God isn't a violent God, is what we're getting into. I'm kind of working my way backwards to that. So one is physical violence. This is probably the most obvious one. But we still stay passive towards it, towards sexual abuse, towards molestation, towards domestic violence of all types, towards the violence on the street, not knowing how to keep a cool head when we get in conflicts or somebody bumps in it. And people think right there for a moment, you think, well, yeah, it's those gangbangers over there. It's those people, those brown and black people over there. So let me tell you something right now. Man, you want to talk about one of the most indignant people to get jumping up and wanting a fist fight? You go to white suburbia and how dare you say that? I'm from that. I've seen different types of violence be just as violent. The violence may be expressed violent, but maybe expressed differently, you may say, but is just as much violence. Just because it's not deemed as, well, the popo is going to come and they're going to come arrest you, doesn't mean you aren't an active participator engaging in violence. It happens all the time, especially when domestic violence comes. Just because it is not a statistic report doesn't mean exactly it isn't happening all the time and it isn't covered up all the time. Where, you got people that are stuck in constantly wives being abused. What about husbands? It's a very small percentage, but yes. 9 times out of 10, it's going to be the man. And that's just not an assumption only. That's the way the world ticks. I realize I said 9 times out of 10. Didn't say 100% of the time. I've seen it. But you got to recognize where the inequality is most of the time. But, the violence that takes place inside of homes, physical violence, smashing things, breaking things, all those things. And we've all in some way, even myself, have contributed to that. And the more I got this revelation, the more I was able to step out of it. Because even as men, I talked about this before, I won't go into the depths of it, we're taught our manhood, our validness of manhood is how well we can be strong in the form of violence. Well, I should be a protector. Yes, but just because you can, pardon me, but beat the crap out of someone, that doesn't make you a protector, and that doesn't make you a man. There are so many other ways to work through that, because you're always going to find somebody bigger and stronger than you. And especially if you are the big and strong, give enough time, age is going to catch up and you're going to meet somebody that's bigger and stronger than you because of age. So going through life like that, we have to shed off those ideas and not even teach manhood that way. So we have to be advocates towards physical violence. I mean, our church is a contributor. We partner with an agency that helps people get out of domestic violence and sexual violence. And actually goes in and they're trained, because as a church, we're not fully equipped. I'm not fully equipped to how to deal with that. I've dealt with situations like that. I've advised through a situation like that. But how much better to support a trained agency that specializes in it? And we do that. And I thank you guys, because your contribution helps us do that, to help stop a nonviolent, to help participate in ending a violent world is what we do. So even our church partnerships, we help do this. The next one we got into is financial, economic violence. And this really shows up in the negative area. And you're going to be, and, I'm very careful when I start talking about violence, because you see certain things, especially when it comes to pushing for justice and for change and for racism and sexism and all the isms, the homophobia, the transphobia, the xenophobia. You could go through the list of all the hateful things that can be acted. And it's like, well, I don't agree with trans people and homosexual people. I don't care whether you agree with it or not necessarily. But I cannot condone the violence that is taken up against those communities. That is never okay. Never okay under any circumstance. And we have to be a strong stance on that. Even as a church, we are anti-violent in that area. whether you agree with it or not. And that, I know that debates, as a pastor, I'm edging us towards certain things to talk about that thing very differently. I know where church world stands. I know the anti-homophobe, anti-gay, anti-trans messaging that goes on very heavily, but it should never, at least can we have a starting place in church world where you can not just turn a blind eye and say, well, they deserve the violence they're getting. That is demonically wired. So, but financial and economic violence. And back to that, what I was talking about. I'm not talking about, like, for example, they Target, is under a heavy scrutiny for good reason. For good reason. They really betrayed the black community. Seriously, it was a betrayal when you said, I'm for you, and now because of political violence, by the way, and pressure, because right now there's a lot of that going on, you turn the other way and you turn your back on supporting a community. Well, that community is going to say, I'm not going to support you. That's not a violence I'm talking about here. What I am talking about, and of course I gave the example of my own spiritual mom, because she's been a target for this. Whenever someone speaks truth to power, particularly, speaks truth to power and says, this is wrong, and I'm going to stand up for injustice of you treating humanity wrong. And I'm not talking about the false victim mentality. You're going to have to use the Spirit of God to really help you realize, because one thing, especially in our political environment now, you have a whole group of people that are under false victimhood. Church loves this. Church persecution in America is the biggest bunch of propaganda I've ever heard. It just is. There's a lot of propaganda in it. When it's like people tell the church, no, you can't go dominate everybody and dominate all the arenas and force everybody to think like you think and brainwash everybody. They fall on the floor and claim church persecution. Well, narcissists do that stuff. And we can have that. And one thing that abusers do, they always try to deflect, and they always try to say, well, it's them. They're at fault. They're the reason I'm having to pick up this violence and do that. Don't buy into that, by the way. They're the reason because they threaten me first. Racist white people do that all the time. Well, that black man made me feel aggressive. Pow, pow. And I know I'm talking about really charged things right now. I am. And I know these always get me in trouble with the comment section and stuff when people do come across it and be like, preacher, basically, the equivalent of shut up and preach. Just shut up and preach the word is what the response is a lot of times, because you don't like me speaking to this. And then you threaten, well, we're not going to fund you. We're not going to support you. We're not going to do all those things. And that's what happens even to a lot of organizations right now. There's financial violence being taken care of against, because right now they're speaking up against domestic violence, sexual violence, violence towards the LGBTQ plus community, violence towards, which is never acceptable, violence towards immigrants right now, which is never acceptable. We should not be violent towards these areas. Well, they're here illegally. They're here this. Is your U.S. citizenship talking louder, or is your Christianity talking louder? And right now, unfortunately, they're called Christianity, and it's not. Is your Christ identity talking louder than I'm a U.S. citizen? I am a U.S. citizen, but I am a Christ citizen first. And U.S. citizenship and its views and its anti-inhumane views at times should never supersede my Christ idea view and my worldview from Christ's perspective. And we have a lot of that in violence. The reason I'm bringing all this out, because we become passive towards the violence. We become passive towards the financial violence. So when, someone speaks out truth to power, all of a sudden we're going to remove your funding. That's financial violence to shut someone up. And the truth is, it can work. And we see that destructiveness taking place right now. Third, we talked about, boy, I wish I could get through these. Third, we talked about psychological and emotional violence. It's mostly psychological violence. You can, you punch that woman in the eye can heal up and the makeup can cover it up, but the pain and the memory is still there for the next 5 to 10 years and maybe longer, because she's always going to remember that for the rest of her life. And it takes a lot to heal that. And that's what people don't realize. They can cause a lot of psychological torment. Just inserting the idea that I may hurt you, just inserting the idea that I may extract violence on you if you don't do what I want, if I can't control you, if I can't dominate you. So you get Stockholm syndromes and all these different things. And we stand back as a church and we say we are either contributors to it or we're passive towards it. And one of the contributive facts, how would church be a contributor, is psychological. There's a lot of, what we're finding is there's a lot of psychological abuse that comes with fear-driven Christianity. When someone is constantly afraid of God's going to hurt them, there's a form of psychological abuse that gets driven in people, and then they have to go get therapy to get out of it, we're finding. That's why at this church, we don't teach fear God. I don't teach show up to church or else. I don't give ultimatums. We're very careful about that because I don't want to, and I'm not saying we got it all perfect, but we're striving for it is what we're doing. So there's the psychological. Then we got to the final one we got to, and then I'll cover the next two, is we got the social violence. And this is not talking about cancel culture. Cancel culture, first of all, the reason that's conflict is because you have so many different definitions of it that people just kind of pick it and choose it as they want to apply it to fit them. And that's a problem in it. So when you bring up cancel culture, it's really hard to try to define that in one regard because people use it in so many different ways. Let me help you out with this, though. Cancel culture used in the form of self-serving reasons and selfish reasons, especially to shut people up because you don't like what they're saying when they're trying to push forward a better world, oh, that's garbage. But holding someone accountable for saying something indecent and inhumane in a moment, in a time, that's not cancel culture. That is standing up for justice. That is standing up for what is right. And that's a very simplistic way, but that's just kind of the starting of that idea. But socially, it's like, we see that happen with all the isms. We talked about that with racism. What was the biggest thing socially? They see, when you take on these violence and what's happening socially with it, we've seen it in our nation happen with brown and black people. We've seen it happen with Islamic people, a religion there. We've seen it happen with LGBTQ+. We've seen it happen with immigrants. And this is not new. This is time and time and time repeating, where we have socially deemed them. We've turned society on them is what we've done. And this is what bothers me with church world, especially in these areas. We turn society on them. Well, the black man is violent. Well, they're going to rape your daughters. They're going to steal from you. No evidence. They're violent because they're always killing each other. Black on black crime, which is a myth. Myth in its context. It is complete myth. These are deflection mechanisms. These are also code for this is a threat, and it's a false threat. It's propaganda to this community is a threat, so we need to eliminate the threat. So because they're violent, we need to rise up in our own violence and hurt them. But the problem is they're not violent. You're oppressing a people socially is what you're doing now. How does it show up socially? What does that affect socially? Well, now because you think that person is violent, because you've accepted the social propaganda and violence, now you won't hire them for a job. Now you won't serve them in a restaurant. Now you won't give them common courtesy and decency out in the world in public. Now it eventually does lead to physical violence, to taking their life. That's the ugly truth when we do that socially. And social media, when it is weaponized, I am not on this kick about being against social media. Social media is a gift if we use it right. It's a tool. It's nor good nor bad. It's the people that facilitate it. And we get to choose what to do with it. But if you weaponize social media, this is where bullying, someone commits suicide online. Because now you've turned a whole social society on them, deemed them as evil, and now everybody piles on and everybody piles on everybody. That's demonically twisted. And we have to be more cautious about how we do things and how we say things and how we say things about people. That's why we have to be careful. I'm always looking, because I come from white culture, some of the racial statements that may have been said, invented 200 plus years ago, are now so diluted and now so normalized that you don't even know they're racist. And now they're just, oh, that's an unusual expression. You don't realize, oh, that's a racially motivated thing. That's a xenophobic. And when I say xenophobic, that means phobia towards outsiders, particularly in this case, immigrants. In this case, xenophobic, and you don't realize what you're even saying. But what you're saying gives life and breath to other people to justify their hatred. That's why it's important to watch what we say socially and not be contributors ourselves, even passively, even unknowingly. When I learned something, I was like, oh, crud, I didn't realize that was racist. I don't double down on it. I say, I'm sorry, I didn't know, and you won't catch me saying it again. That's what we do. That's how we improve. Because why? I'm striving for a non-violent world. A non-hateful world is what I'm striving towards. Political. Let's get into some ugly things. What about separation of church state? What about all that stuff? I don't even have time to get into that time. We're going to run out of time. Political violence, though, is a big thing right now. I'll say this to you guys. You know there is no party that represents God, even though a lot of church world deems a party as their God's party. That is a lie. Whenever you hear that preacher is lying through their teeth. They believe it, and some of them believe it in their heart, but they are selling you something very anti-Christ. Vote by faith is code for a very anti-Christ statement, because they're always telling you how to vote by faith, and you're telling what your faith should represent. And they bring out the things like this party, see their foundational things they represent. That all that is horse dung. All of it is lies from hell, and all of it is propaganda. But it leads to a lot of political violence. And the church world is standing by and being quiet about it. When a whole ministry builds their platform off telling you who to vote for, and it's like political, it's hard not to talk about religion and political together, because especially recently they've really got in bed with each other more than ever, even though they've always been in bed with each other. But when a whole ministry bases on telling you how to vote and who you should vote for, and spins the narrative to say your faith is tied to voting for this political candidate or party, realize they're speaking the language of devils. And I'm being very vulgar, and not very vulgar, very direct, excuse me, not vulgar, very direct about it is what I'm being. Do not participate in that. I say that to our church because it's around us. It's not far from us. And I've always promised to never name names and name ministries on this, but God, sometimes I want to. And I don't, because it never leads to anywhere good, because then that could, in one regard, lead violence towards another. But even the political violence that's used as boogeyman to get people to vote for you in a certain way, that's, oh, they're coming for your jobs. Oh, there's this group doing this. There's that group doing this. See, they're coming to get your kids. They're coming to do all that. Is fear-mongering that leads to violence, is what that does. And then now we have a political administration right now that's trying to act as a dictatorship that says, if you don't agree with me, I will hurt you. And I will send physical violence. I will send financial violence to you. I will send psychological violence to you. I will use my social media platform to commit social violence. And then the worst, I will pick up religion and use it as violence with you to get you to vote the way I want you to vote, and legislate the way I want you to legislate, and run this country the way I want you to run. That is violence. And I will lie and say whatever fear-mongering thing to get my supporters and people and rallying around me to vote the way I want. And what I'm trying to be very careful about is not voting for people that instigate violence and instigate political violence on that note. And a lot of that political violence is tied into very self-serving, because it's power hungry. It's greed is what it is. All politicians are like that. All politicians are not like that. You got to do your homework. Well, this party's like that, or it's both sides. It's not both sides. It's not this political party. You got to do your homework and do it better is what it is. But if your political views make you want to be violent towards others and exercise violence towards others in the form of physical, financial, psychological, or socially, or religiously, you realize you have missed God. So this isn't about assigning to a political party. This is about checking your heart. This is about checking your heart is what it's going to be. And so we kind of wrap up here, because I'm getting to the end. And That's a nutshell what political. I could spend talking a lot more. Nicole is way better at talking about this stuff than me, so I'm learning from her all the time. But it is a huge area we got to recognize. You know, or we're going to end up with situations, what concerns me, the violence like we saw on January the 6th. And people are like, are you bringing up a Democrat? Listen, whether you believed it was Democrats showing up to put on a coup and blame the Republicans, whether you believed it was Republicans and anti-crazy people and MAGA people showing up there that day, I don't really care at that moment. What you saw was whatever group of people you want to label as did show up, and lives were lost that day. Life was lost. A lot of people got hurt. A lot of people, there was people that was murdered. There was people that went to jail, all because of this fear that was stoked in all of them. And that they honestly believed, and they felt that the only way they could do it was, now I got to really go hurt people in the name of my political party, in the name of my political ideas and concept. There has to be a better way. Do I have all the answers for that situation? No. But I know there is a higher way that God is leading us to. And we have to get out of the petty squabbling, the petty back and forth, the political scoring, and realize the greater picture is, man, we want humanity to thrive. My last one, which I won't get in tonight, which will set up actually us going through more scriptures, I want to take time and go through this one, is religious violence. And this is where we get into the whole essence of God as a nonviolent God. So I'm going to talk about religious violence next week, and maybe next week or in 2 weeks. I'm not sure. I may be traveling next week, so I don't want to promise. It's still kind of a question mark whether I'll be here next Thursday or not. If not, you'll see a refreshing message from Sunday streamed out here as always. But like I said, this is not a traditional Bible study. I don't show up and say I got to preach every Thursday. I show up and saying I got fresh revelation and I need to get this out. And that's what the church could be is all about. So we're going to get into religious violence, and I'm going to take you through showing God is nonviolent. I'm going to take you through the scriptures of Jesus showing how he stood against violence, how he didn't promote violence, and how he did not act out on violence. And we'll go through 5 major ideas that we take up through religion about God being violent. And I'm going to show you in the scripture how Jesus debunked it, is what we're going to do. So I pray tonight's message blesses you. I hope you can hear through and hear my heart as I'm saying stuff and talking about stuff that may be challenging, but I really want this to become the culture of our church, of the idea. What I mean by that, the idea of us being people that are nonviolent, non-contributors to violence, but also people that aren't passive towards violence being carried out, which leads to human suffering. Man, we should always be advocates for anti-hate, anti-violence. When people are suffering, let's stand up and do something about it. And it doesn't mean let's go get the evil them. It means let's push forward a better idea and say, no, this is wrong. Here is a better way of doing it. We need to be better is what we need to be as society, as a nation, as a church world, as a community. That's what I pray. As always, Nicole and I send her love and blessings. Thank you all for each and every time you come together. I pray all is well in your homes, and I'll catch you guys hopefully Saturday or Sunday. If not, should be back here next Sunday. Next Thursday. I know I said I may be out of town. We'll see what happens. But if not, I'll be the next Thursday we come together. We'll pick this up. Love you guys. Have a great night.